at the Jackanory.
I want to tell you about an emperor of long, long ago who loved pancakes. Every day of the year, he had 6 pancakes for breakfast. Great big yellow ones they were, and round as round. One fine morning in the spring, he came down to breakfast feeling especially merry. "Happy birthday, Your Excellency," said the first footman, pushing the emperor's chair up, snug behind his knees. "Happy birthday, Your Excellency," said the second footman, as he laid out the emperor's golden spoon, fork, and knife. "Happy birthday, Your Excellency," said the court chamberlain, bowing low. "The same to you," said the emperor merrily, pouring cream onto his porridge. Immediately he'd finished his porridge and propped up all his birthday cards in front of him, his empty plate was whisked away, and in came the fourth and fifth footman, bearing between them a broad silver dish. The emperor beamed and rubbed his hands together. "Pancakes! Oh, how very nice," he said. "Capital!" Just as if he didn't have pancakes every day of the year. Then the 2 footmen, armed with huge silver forks, began lifting 5 pancakes from the silver dish. Out they came, each as round and crisp as could be. And now, as the emperor reached for the sugar, out came the last pancake. He stopped, and he stared, and he gasped. Trembling with fury, he rose slowly to his feet. His face began to turn bright purple. And then he opened his mouth and roared, "Oblong!" Everybody stared in horror, and everybody trembled in fear. The 5 footmen, terrified out of their wits, turned and fled. Even the court chamberlain had half a mind to follow them, but remembering that he'd once been the bravest corporal in the emperor's army, he stood his ground. "Excellency," he said, bowing right down to the ground and raising his eyebrows at the same time. "Oblong!" roared the emperor again, and then he stabbed with his fork right into the middle of the 6th pancake and raised it high in the air. "It's an insult! This pancake is oblong!" And so it was, as oblong as oblong as oblong. "Explain!" roared the emperor. I can't, Your Excellency. However, I'll find out about it immediately." And the chamberlain, with a somewhat hasty bow, hurried away. Left to himself, the emperor began to feel rather foolish standing there holding his fork aloft. "Drat the thing," he said, and hurled the offending pancake as far as he could across the courtyard, where it stuck in the top of one of the almond trees. By and by, after he'd finished the 5 round pancakes, he was just having an extra piece of toast to make up for the 1 pancake he hadn't had, when the court chamberlain hurried in. "Excellency," he said, "it would appear that it was a birthday present. Actually, it was a frying pan." The emperor began to smile. "I see. The frying pan was a birthday present, and being oblong, it fried an oblong pancake." "Your Excellency's perspicacity," said the chamberlain, "is indeed remarkable." "Oh, I don't know," said the emperor, modestly. But in fact, he didn't, but it sounded complimentary, and he was pleased to have guessed right. Twiddling his sugar spoon, he said, "Well, I rather like the idea. Yes, oblong pancake. After all, one likes to be a little different, doesn't one?" And the court chamberlain said, "Of course. And oh, yes, indeed." "Good," said the emperor. "Then that's understood. Oblong pancakes only in future." And he bounced away as merry as ever to see to the day's business. Now, that, you might think, was the end of the story. But he wasn't an ordinary emperor. And he soon made up his mind that everyone in the empire should share his great discovery. In no time at all, the whole population was buying oblong frying pans and frying oblong pancakes. Then, one morning in autumn, just as he was finishing his 6th pancake, an uneasy feeling came over him. Something still seemed not quite as it should be. The emperor pondered, and staring at his empty plate, and as he stared, he began to smile. "Of course! Why didn't I think of it before? Oblong pancakes need oblong plates. It's common sense." Springing to his feet, strode across the marble dining room and tugged the bell pull. "Excellency," said the chamberlain, rather out of breath from rushing from the butler's pantry. "Oblong pancakes need oblong plates," the emperor briefly. "Arrange it." By breakfast time next morning, there before the Emperor was a fine golden plate, all new and gleaming. It had the imperial arms stamped in the middle, and, of course, it was oblong. The Emperor said nothing, but he was pleased all the same. He liked to have his orders promptly obeyed, and besides, one did like to be just a little different. Of course, the Emperor didn't stay different very long, because he soon had every potter and tinsmith in the Empire turning out oblong plates for every man, woman, and child in the land. And after that, people began to have oblong saucepans, oblong spoons, oblong bottles, and oblong dishes. They wore oblong hats, and they carried oblong umbrellas when it rained. They even bumped about the streets in carriages with oblong wheels. Oh, it was most uncomfortable. But they felt it was best to be prepared. At the same time, the Emperor couldn't help trying to think of new things to change. By next autumn, all the apple trees were loaded with oblong apples. And all the hens in the land, poor things, were laying oblong eggs. As the Emperor surveyed the scene from his dining room window, he was filled with pride by his own quick thinking and the cleverness of his subjects. Even the great brass cannons at the far side of the courtyard, beyond the oblong fountains, had oblong cannonballs. And among the oblong almonds, blue and green parakeets flitted and chattered. Over all shone the soft, warm radiance of the autumn sun. What a beautiful day, sighed the Emperor. What a beautiful, beautiful day. And then he stopped. He stopped, and he stared, and he gasped, and he opened his mouth and roared, "Round!" Just as the court chamberlain was putting away all the knives and forks and oblong spoons. "Excellency." "Round!" roared the Emperor again. "The sun is round. Have it changed at once." Dancing with rage. "That ugly, great, yellow, round thing hanging over my lovely oblong empire. Change it." Yes, Excellency," said the court chamberlain, and he bolted out through the bronze double doors. Once outside, he mopped his brow. How in the name of all that was round could anybody make the sun oblong? He shrugged his shoulders helplessly and went off to try. First, he told all the Emperor's woodmen to chop down every tree in the Empire. Then he told all the Emperor's soldiers to build them up into a tall, tall tower just outside the palace walls. Every day, the tower grew taller, and every day the chamberlain climbed to the top to see if they were getting anywhere near the sun yet. By and by, there were no more trees left, and the sun seemed as far away as ever. So they gave that up. Then he asked all the Emperor's soldiers if any of them would volunteer to be tied to one of the oblong cannonballs and be shot up to the sun with a hammer in his hand. And at last, one of the very bravest said he would try. Up he went like a rocket. But as he was rather fat, he didn't go nearly high enough, and he soon came down again and splashed into one of the oblong fountain pools. And a very sorry sight he looked, too, by the time they hauled him out. Still, we gave him a medal for trying. Then, finally, the Emperor lost his patience. He rang all the bells in the palace very loudly, and the chamberlain and the footmen and the soldiers and all the lords and ladies of the court, not to mention the people, hurried into the courtyard. "You are the most useless lot of subjects an emperor ever had," he said, addressing them from the balcony. "You don't deserve a progressive monarch like myself. I gave orders 3 weeks ago for the sun to be made oblong, and look at it." Everybody assured him that they'd done their best, and that they tried and tried and tried. But the Emperor continued to be cross. He said, "Your best is not good enough. You all deserve to be boiled in oil. Instead, however, I shall do the job myself. Every evening, the sun comes down to the edge of the earth. That's the time to deal with it." And he ordered his chariot, pressed his crown firmly on his head, whipped up his 4 black horses, and shot away in a cloud of dust. Next morning, everybody was up early to see the sunrise. As the first pink glow appeared in the east, all the people craned their necks and held their breath. And then suddenly, up popped the sun. It was still as round as round. "Must be farther than we thought," said the chamberlain. "Still, the Emperor is so determined that he's sure to get there in the end. We shall just have to be patient." But while they waited, the days grew to weeks, and then to months, and still the sun came up every morning as round as ever. Meanwhile, Some of the people less patient than the others began to change all their oblong wheels back to round ones. And then one day, quite suddenly, very much to everybody's surprise, and his own as well, the Emperor came back. "Well, I never," said the Emperor, climbing stiffly out of his chariot. "I must have taken a wrong turning somewhere. How very annoying." So he had a wash and brush up and a little something to keep out the cold. And then, amid the cheers of the people, he drove off. But this time, he pointed his chariot the other way and galloped rapidly away toward the east. And so it went on for a long time. The sun stayed as round, and gradually everything which had once been oblong was changed back to being round, too. Every now and then the Emperor would suddenly arrive back again and say, "Oh, bother," and gallop off in a new direction. But as time passed, it became clear that no matter in which direction he galloped, he always came back again to where he'd started from. And no one could understand that. Then, one day in spring, he came back for the umpteenth time. But this time he didn't say, "Oh, bother," but came galloping up as merry as could be. He rang all the bells and summoned all the people into the courtyard. They held their hats behind their backs because, of course, they were round and they didn't want the Emperor to see. "My people," he began, "you have been very patient, loyal, and obedient subjects in every way." He began to smile thoughtfully. I have failed to reach the sun, but that no longer matters. For, my dear people, your Emperor has established, by personal experiment, a new and amazing scientific fact. The world, in short," he paused for a moment and then shouted at the top of his voice, "the world is round!" You should have heard the cheering. And then the Emperor held up his hand again. "So now, in consequence," he said, "it is my way that everything in the Empire should be round as well, to match." The Court Chamberlain stepped forward and bowed as low as Lowe. "May it please your Excellency, it's already done." "Capital! Capital!" cried the Emperor, and he danced a little jig. Then he turned and entered the marble dining room. "About breakfast," he said. "May I suggest pancakes, Excellency?" ventured the Court Chamberlain. "Nothing could be nicer," said the Emperor. The Chamberlain bowed as low as Lowe. "Would your Excellency prefer them round or oblong?" The Emperor thought for a moment, and his eyes twinkled. "Oblong, please. I should continue to have my pancakes oblong. After all, one does like to be a little different." So that was that. Goodbye, goodbye.
If you